All right, boys and girls, good morning. I hope you had a great night last night. You know what we're going to do today? We are going to learn about the Oregon Trail. That's pretty exciting, how the pioneers used to exist. So we're going to read a great book today. It's called Life as a Pioneer on the Oregon Trail by Jerry Friedman. Now, this book is going to be full of great information about what life was like as travelers, people who are looking to settle out in the West, prepare for trail travel. And we'll also look at the consequences or what some of the risks were of that travel on the dangerous Oregon Trail. Did you know historians believe that about 400,000 people traveled the Oregon Trail? And out of those 400,000, only about 80,000 people actually made it to the very end of the trail. People pulled off and stopped along the way. They moved to Northern California where they could search for gold. There was a lot of things going on. And listen to this, 20,000 people died on the Oregon Trail. That is a lot of people that died trying to get out west to settle the West. So today we're going to learn some words, but first I want to show you just kind of an area where the Oregon was at the time. We think about Oregon being a state now. It's one of our 50 states. But at the time, Oregon was just a territory. It was not a state. It belonged to the United States, but it wasn't a state yet. It covered the area of Washington State, where that's at now. That was known as Oregon Territory. Oregon itself, Idaho, that was part of Oregon Territory. A little bit of Montana and a little bit of Wyoming. All was a part of that Oregon Territory where people were going to try to settle. Now, we're going to learn some new words today as well during our reading. So let's look at some of these words. Can anyone tell me what a wagon train is? Do you know what a wagon train would be?
No.
Okay, a wagon train would be a long line of wagons, covered wagons like you've seen on TV, that they would be going to the west. So they would all be covered wagons heading out to the west with all sorts of things. What's a settler? We talked about that just a little bit. What would a settler be?
Someone who stops along the way?
That could be true, but a settler would stop along the way for the purpose of doing something. And what they want to do is they want to start a community in a brand new place. So a settler might stop along the way, or they might make it all the way out to Oregon. And so this is a tough one. This is two words. What is manifest destiny? Do you know?
I don't know.
All right, that is a tough one, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. As Americans pushed all the way to the West Coast, you know, we discovered America, or Columbus came to America on the east, and Americans went all the way across the country to the west. And we're going to talk about that during our book. So let's get into our reading. I'm going to get our laptop together. And to the people watching, I apologize that you'll see my back, but this was the best way to do this. So we're going to talk about life as a pioneer on the Oregon Trail. This is by Jerry Friedman. In our introduction, imagine leaving your home, saying goodbye to your friends, getting in a covered wagon with your family and riding far away to a place you've never seen. People called pioneers did that in the 1800s. Pioneers were people who wished to live in the western United States. They could get land to start farms. Going west, pioneers had to cross large fields called plains and go over the Rocky Mountains. Many pioneers followed the Oregon Trail, a 2,200-mile trail. That was a route that went from the Midwest of the United States to Oregon. And along the way, they faced many dangers. Now, we use a couple of words here. Plains. What do you think plains could be? It talks about covering the plains and going through the Rocky Mountains. Give me an idea of what you believe plains would be.
Well, it's not like airplane planes, so maybe if it's not a mountain, maybe something flat.
It is flat. That's very good. It's land, and it's covered with tall grass and has very few trees. So if you drive further west out into Kansas, guess what you're going to see? You're going to see plains. You're going to see flat lands covered with tall grass. Now, what is Midwest? And we've talked about this a little bit in the past when we talk about weather patterns. What would the Midwest be in this context?
Like the middle of the country?
That's right. It would be the part of the United States that's around the Mississippi River. So anything that's close to the Mississippi River within a few hundred miles would be considered the Midwest. Now, before we move on, and we've got a lot of text here, let's take a look at this picture. And what do we see in the picture? We see a family that's covered with a covered wagon. What are some of the things that the family are holding or is setting around the covered wagon?
I see their hats.
They have a hat to protect them from the sun as they're crossing the plains, because we said there's very few trees.
I see a bucket.
A bucket? You have to have something to haul drinking water in, don't you?
Yeah.
All right.
Looks like maybe a picture up there on top of their wagon.
Well, I think that might be a pan, like some type of a baking pan. They're pots and pans that they use to cook while they're out on the trail. Let's talk about the history of the Oregon Trail. The Oregon Trail started as separate trails used by Native Americans in the early 1800s. Fur traders used the trails to create one path. This path joined at places where traders could sell animal furs. Christians sent people along the trail in the 1830s to get the Native Americans to believe in Christianity. In the early 1840s, newspapers began to publish stories of how wonderful Oregon was. People in eastern cities began to head west. Some wanted land to farm. Others were runaway slaves. They could be free if they could get to Oregon. The first group of pioneers to travel the Oregon Trail left Independence, Missouri. Did you know Independence is just a few miles from where we are right now? That was the beginning of the Oregon Trail. And that all started in 1841. They followed the fur traders' route. They took an easy mountain pass in Wyoming through the Rocky Mountains. Finally, they reached Oregon. After thousands of people traveled the Oregon Trail, by 1884, railroads connected Oregon to the rest of the United States. After that, people no longer traveled the trail by wagon. What do you think would be easier, traveling the trail by wagon or traveling by railroad?
Be faster by road.
That's exactly right. And look at this picture we have right here. We talked a little bit about a wagon train, and a wagon train is a long string of wagons that travel together. So look, we've got wagons, we've got them all going out to the west, we've got people walking with the wagons, we've got horses and mules that are pulling the wagons, and look at all that dust. Doesn't that look dirty?
Yeah.
You know, we don't see any air conditioning in the wagons, do we? We didn't, in our picture we looked at a little bit ago, we didn't see any toys that are in that picture, did we? So there's a lot of things, a lot of comforts that we don't have here in this picture. Now, a pioneer's life on the trail began early and ended late. Once awake, men began to take down tents and round up cattle. Women and children cooked food such as porridge and bacon for breakfast. What do you think porridge would be?
Like cereal?
Kind of. It's a grain. Your cereal's made of grains, but this is a grain, kind of like oatmeal, and they would boil it to make kind of a mash. So that would be porridge, and they would have bacon. And after breakfast, men hitched oxen or mules to the wagons. Women washed and put away dishes and pots. Then the wagons began to travel. Unless they were sick or crossing difficult paths of trail, most people walked. Riding in wagons was uncomfortable. Riding also made the wagons heavier. Since wagons carried supplies, some people rode horses. Around noon, they would stop to rest and eat lunch. Typically, a group traveled 15 to 20 miles a day. Around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the leaders of the wagon train would look for a good place to set up camp. Families would then eat dinner and do chores, such as taking care of animals and fixing clothes. They would play music and dance, and everyone would be asleep by 8 o'clock that night. Men would take turns throughout the night guarding the people and the animals. What do you think they were guarding people from?
Bears?
Bears and animals, yeah, things like that. And just other people that might want to rob them while they were on the way. So that is a look at some of the things of the Oregon Trail. Because of time, we kind of cut back on that. So it's a great story of the Oregon Trail. So we learned a little bit about how dangerous it was to travel out to Oregon. So Again, give me an idea. What is a wagon train?
A bunch of wagons following each other.
A bunch of wagons that are following each other. Now, let's think a little bit. How many of you have ever been on a long trip, like a vacation?
I have
All right, and what did you pack in your suitcase?
clothes,
Okay,
my toothbrush.
toothbrush, you need to be clean. How about probably packed a bathing suit because you had a chance to go swimming while you were there. Packed a lot of things that you were going to need. What if you had to pack everything you own and travel for 5 to 6 months in one direction to get where you were going? What would you take? You couldn't take everything, could you? You could only take some of the things that you were going to need. And you need to take the things that are most important to you. So, some of those things you would take, let's talk about that. You would have to take your own food, wouldn't you? There's no restaurants on the Oregon Trail. There's no grocery stores on the Oregon Trail, so you would have to take your own food. What would you need if your wagon broke down?
Some tools.
Some tools. You'd have to have tools to fix your wagon, maybe the wagon of the people that were with you. Of course, we talked about clothes. You're going to need those as well. What about if you got cold? What would you need?
Blankets.
Blankets. You're going to need blankets. Maybe a mattress, something soft to lay on at night when you're camping out. What about those men that were guarding the wagon train? They took turns to guard the wagon train. What do you think they would need to help them guard that wagon train?
Their slingshots or guns.
Slingshots, they would need some type of a weapon, wouldn't they? And rifles were really the big weapon that they had back in that time. So you would need your weapons. You would need cooking utensils, all right? You would need something to cook with. What about light at night? You ever think about that? It's dark outside at night, isn't it, when you're out in the middle of nowhere? So what would you need? They didn't have flashlights back then.
They have like gas lamps.
Yeah, kerosene. They used kerosene lanterns, oil lamps at that time. What if you got sick? What would you need?
Medicine.
Medicine. You need some kind of medicine. And also, like we saw in the picture, a bucket to carry your water and things in. So what I want you to do, and this is going to be a lot of fun, you've all got your papers. You've got yours right there. You've got some colored pencils. So what I'd like for you to do is color your wagon. Now, the pictures we saw in the text are all black and white, but the wagons are made out of wood, and you can make your wagon colorful, all right? So what I want you to do is to color your wagon, and then on the inside, I want you to draw those things. I gave you all a word list. I want you to draw pictures of things that you must take on your trip, all right? You're going to find out, you got to pack all that stuff in the wagon. So you're going to be drawing that, and then there's another list that says you have to choose 5 of these to put in there as well. So you need to pick the most important things. Those things are things like a crate of chickens. Why would you need a crate of chickens? All right, think about that. A rocking chair, pillows, a baby cradle, some rope. How about a piano? And soap, animal food.
You can't take a piano.
Can't take a piano. Pianos big, aren't they? Some people probably did though. So you draw and color in your wagon and make the pictures of the things that you're going to take, all right? And then what we're going to do, once you're done, because the wagons were covered with canvas, we've got some cutout things for you to do, and we're going to glue canvas over your wagon. But we're going to be able to lift up those things and be able to look inside and see what's in there. All right? So I want you to get started on that and make it very, very neat. I want to see your best work on these. Make it very, very neat. All right, thank you so much for doing all that hard work. Your wagons look awesome. Let's talk a little bit about your wagons and what you chose to put in your wagons. So, Karen, there's a list there of the things you have to choose 5 of to put in your wagon. Tell me one of the things that you put in your wagon.
Things that I have to take or things I chose?
No, the things that you chose. We know that everybody in the class put the same things in because everybody here is going to need food and tools and medicine. But you know, there are some things people choose differently about. And so, what are one of the 5 things that you chose to put in your wagon?
A crate of chickens.
A crate of chickens, all right? And why did you pick a crate of chickens?
Because chickens will lay eggs. And
That's a good idea. Your chickens are going to lay eggs, so not only are you going to have porridge, you're going to have bacon for breakfast, you're going to have eggs as well.
And then, they'll also, we can kill them and eat them.
We can. That's right. We can butcher our chickens, and we can have those later on. Is there anything else that you could? So we're talking about food when we talk about a crate of chickens. All right. And also, if the chickens are still alive when we get to where we're going on the Oregon Trail, we can have a chicken coop, and we can begin having some chickens there as well. So what's another thing that you would put on there?
A rope?
A rope. Now is this a jumping rope that you would put on there?
No, a rope.
A
big rope.
All right, so
Big
a big rope. What would you do with a rope? What could you use a rope for on the Oregon Trail?
You could lasso something,
All right, like the cowboys did in the Old West.
or if you got stuck.
Yeah, as we saw in the text, sometimes wagons would get stuck in the mud, sometimes in the snow, sometimes they would slide off the road. So what they would do is they would actually hook up the mules, hook up the oxen, hook up the horses, and they would pull the wagon up. So to do that, you would have to have a rope to be able to do that. So boys and girls, you have done an awesome job today. We have learned some great things. We've learned what it's like to be out on the Oregon Trail, what pioneers and some of the consequences they had to face, death and being hungry and being cold and not having the comforts. We also learned how you can take a look at your graphic organizer there, the poster that you made with your wagon, and how you would actually pack that wagon with things that you have to have and things that you're choosing to have. So you've done a great job. Before we're done though, how many of you would like to go travel the Oregon Trail?
No.
I didn't think there'd be many, but you know what? In Kansas, there's a bicycle route you can take that closely mirrors the Oregon Trail. So it goes from Independence, Missouri, up through the northern part of Kansas, up through Topeka, and that is how close we are to the Oregon Trail. Boys and girls, you have been awesome. Thank you very much. Let's get everything put away. Stack up your papers nice and neat. Make sure your name is up in the top left-hand corner.